Welcome to this deep dive, and we're going to be looking at a topic that's both ancient and incredibly timely, exopolitics.
Hmm.
Now, we're not just talking about UFOs here, we're talking about the whole spectrum of how humanity might interact with life beyond Earth.
Yeah, it's a field that asks some seriously big questions. Questions like, how would we communicate? What about laws and ethics across different planets? It's like building a whole new system of global politics, but on a cosmic scale.
Exactly. And to guide us through all this, we're going to be diving deep into Miguel Salazar's upcoming book, Beyond Earth. He covers so much, everything from potential contact scenarios to historical accounts, and they'll make you rethink what you thought you knew, I guarantee it.
One thing Salazar really gets right is that exopolitics isn't just for, sci-fi fans anymore. This stuff has real-world implications, and the sooner we start thinking about it, the better.
So let's get into it. When Salazar says exopolitics, what does he actually mean by that?
He defines it as, well, the political implications and structures that arise from the very existence of extraterrestrial life.
Hmm.
So imagine you've got diplomacy, law, ethics, all playing out on this stage, but it's so much larger than anything we've ever encountered.
And he even uses the phrase protocols for contact scenarios. Suddenly, it's not just a philosophical debate. It feels like something that could actually happen.
And historically, not having these protocols, well, it put us in some tricky spots. Just take the Roswell incident. Imagine the chaos if there had been a clear plan in place for dealing with potential alien contact.
Oh, that's a great point. It makes you realize this isn't, some futuristic fantasy. It's something we need to be thinking about like right now.
Hmm.
So how did we get from ancient myths and stargazing to this modern idea of exopolitics?
It's really fascinating to trace, how humanity's relationship with the cosmos has evolved over time. We've got ancient cultures with their sky gods and celestial beings, and that sense of awe and wonder, well, it definitely laid the groundwork.
But something must happen to take it from mythology to this more structured, field of study.
Oh, absolutely. The post-World War II era, that was a turning point. Suddenly you have all these UFO sightings, they're just exploding, and you have the Cold War paranoia, which just adds this whole other layer of tension.
Can you imagine, like, living in that time? I mean, the world is still recovering from war, and then you have these flying discs, they just start appearing. It must have been mind-blowing.
Totally. People are trying to make sense of all these events. They were unexplained, and the world was already on edge. And that's when you start seeing the emergence of organizations like Project Blue Book and the growing role of media in shaping the whole narrative.
That historical context is so important. So we've got this foundation of human curiosity and a dash of Cold War intrigue. But then Salazar jumps into something even wilder. Extraterrestrial diplomacy. We're actually talking about treaties with aliens.
It might sound a little like science fiction, but if you even just, accept the possibility of intelligent life out there, diplomacy just becomes, well, crucial. We can't just assume we can impose our own rules on a galactic community.
Okay, but this is where, like, my brain starts to melt. How do you even begin to think about interstellar negotiations? What common ground could we possibly have?
That's where Salazar's breakdown of the different models of engagement is so helpful. He talks about these four: the cooperative, the defensive, the explorer, and the contingent. Each one has its own set of assumptions about how we might interact with alien civilizations.
So it's not just one giant, like, take me to your leader scenario. There are different approaches we could take depending on who we encounter.
Exactly. The cooperative model, for example, assumes a willingness to work together, sharing knowledge and resources. It's very optimistic, but it also leaves us potentially vulnerable if, the other civilization doesn't share our peaceful intentions.
So a bit like trusting a stranger with your house key. Could be a great roommate, or it could also, empty your bank account. What about the other models? How do they approach this first contact situation?
Well, the defensive model is all about, prioritizing our own safety and security. Recognizes that there's potential for conflict and emphasizes preparedness. But going with a purely defensive strategy might make us appear hostile, potentially even sparking the conflict that we're trying to avoid.
That's a tough balance. Being cautious, but not closing ourselves off entirely.
Right.
It's like meeting someone new. You want to be open, but also protect yourself just in case.
Exactly. Salazar also highlights the explorer model, which, well, this one focuses on gaining knowledge and understanding above all else. It assumes that curiosity is universal, that humans and extraterrestrials would both be driven by a desire to learn.
I like that. Less about, conquest and more about mutual discovery.
Well,
But couldn't that lead to problems too? I mean, look at human history. Exploration hasn't always been so innocent.
You're right, and that's where the ethical considerations come in. We have to be mindful of our past mistakes and approach any potential contact, well, with respect and a willingness to learn, not just to exploit.
So are these models just theoretical, or have there been actual attempts at creating some kind of framework for extraterrestrial diplomacy?
Believe it or not, there have been some attempts. The UNOSA, that's the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs, they're actually working on communication protocols for potential extraterrestrial contact as we speak.
Wait, so the UN is figuring out how to talk to aliens? That's wild. So they're taking this seriously then.
They are, and they're not alone. There's also the Greta Treaty. Now, that's a purported agreement between the U.S. government and extraterrestrials, potentially outlining guidelines for interaction and even technology exchange.
Hold on. A treaty with aliens, that sounds like something out of a movie. Is there any proof that this thing actually exists?
Well, it's shrouded in secrecy, which, fuels a lot of speculation and debate. Some people dismiss it as just a conspiracy theory, while others believe it's evidence of a deeper level of government involvement in exopolitics than we even realize.
All this secrecy makes you wonder, what else might be going on behind closed doors? And that's where those UFO disclosure movements come into play, right? I mean, they're pushing for more transparency about what governments know about extraterrestrial life.
Exactly. They argue that this secrecy just breeds distrust and that it prevents a more informed public discourse on a topic that could have, well, profound implications for humanity.
This is already so much to process. And we've only just scratched the surface of exopolitics.
We have, but think of this as laying the foundation. We've gone over the historical context, the different models of engagement, and even touched upon some real-world attempts at extraterrestrial diplomacy.
It's incredible how something that once seemed, purely theoretical is now a field with real-world implications.
And as we go even deeper, well, you'll see those implications play out even more vividly. From the impact it could have on national security to the ethical dilemmas we might face, exopolitics is full of surprises.
Okay, so my mind is officially blown. Secret treaties. The UN prepping for alien contact. That's a lot to take in. But before we go too far into the hypothetical, let's bring it back down to earth for a second. How does all this exopolitical stuff actually, impact our lives right now?
That's a really great question, and it leads us to a crucial aspect of exopolitics, the impact it has on national security. Because, if we're acknowledging the possibility of life beyond Earth, it just naturally raises these questions about defense, intelligence, and how we protect ourselves.
It makes you wonder, are our current military strategies even remotely equipped to handle some kind of extraterrestrial encounter?
Yeah.
We're used to thinking about tanks and missiles, not spaceships and laser beams.
Yeah, it's a whole new ballgame. Suddenly we have to think about things like defending ourselves against, well, technologies that we don't even know about, gathering intelligence on these civilizations that could be way more advanced than us, and doing all of this while still trying to, adhere to ethical principles.
So it's not just about building bigger weapons. It's about rethinking our whole approach to defense and intelligence.
Oh, absolutely. We have to be prepared for a much wider range of scenarios, from peaceful contact to potential conflict. And that requires the shift in thinking, at the highest levels of government and military planning.
It's almost like we need a whole new branch of the military, something like Space Force, but totally focused specifically on extraterrestrial encounters. I wonder if anyone's actually working on that.
It might sound, a little far-fetched, but governments are definitely starting to take this seriously. Just look at, the recent Pentagon reports on UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena. They're acknowledging that these objects exist. They used to be dismissed as just speculation.
That's a huge shift, right? It feels like we're finally moving past that era of denial and all the secrecy and into something that's, more open. More open acknowledgement of the unknown.
It really does feel that way. And it's forcing us to ask some tough questions. How do we assess these potential threats? What kind of defense systems might actually be effective against some advanced alien technology? And how do we, balance national security with the need for transparency and, public engagement?
So many questions and no easy answers. It makes you wonder if anyone's even started to develop strategies for dealing with all these potential exopolitical threats.
They have, and Salazar actually outlines some pretty interesting approaches in his book. He really emphasizes this multifaceted strategy that involves, diplomacy, public engagement, and strategic policy formulation.
So it's not just about military might. It's about using a bunch of different tools and approaches.
Exactly. On the diplomacy front, well, he suggests that we need to start thinking about international treaties that would, address these potential extraterrestrial encounters. Imagine guidelines for communication, resource sharing, even mutual defense agreements.
That's a fascinating idea. I mean, having some set of rules that, like, the whole world agrees on could really help to prevent those misunderstandings
Right.
and potentially even avoid conflict.
Oh, it would. But treaties are just, part of the picture. Salazar also stresses how important public education is and awareness campaigns.
Mhm.
We really need to move beyond all the sensationalism and the misinformation that often surround those UFO phenomena.
Right. We need to foster a more informed and, nuanced understanding of extraterrestrial life and what it all could mean for us. It can't just be Hollywood movies and all those conspiracy theories shaping public opinion.
You got it. And that involves working with the media in a responsible way, an ethical way. We need to encourage factual reporting and critical thinking, helping people separate that credible evidence from all the speculation.
So it's not just about defending ourselves against these potential threats. It's also about building understanding and creating a foundation for, positive interactions.
That's exactly it. Because, ultimately, we don't know what kind of civilizations are out there, right? They could be totally peaceful and, benevolent, or they could be hostile. The best way to ensure a good outcome is to just approach contact with humility, with respect, and, well, a willingness to communicate.
That makes a lot of sense. But what about, the potential for extraterrestrial technologies falling into the wrong hands? That just seems like a huge national security concern.
It is a major concern. And that's why Salazar suggests that we need to be, well, more proactive about developing our own advanced technologies. It's not about, trying to outgun those potential alien visitors, but about being prepared for anything that might happen, whether it's, a peaceful exchange of knowledge or something where we need to defend ourselves.
That's where, the role of all the intelligence agencies just becomes so crucial, doesn't it? They're the ones on the front lines of gathering all the information and assessing those potential threats.
They are, but, as we've talked about, transparency and accountability, well, they're just essential. We can't just blindly trust that the intelligence agencies are always going to act in our best interest.
It's such a delicate balance, trusting our institutions to protect us while also holding them accountable. And it just gets, way more complex when you're dealing with something that's potentially as, world-changing as extraterrestrial contact.
It definitely does. And that's why open dialogue and informed debate are so important. We need to have those honest conversations about the ethical implications of exopolitics and, the impact it has on national security. And those conversations need to involve everybody, not just, governments and the intelligence agencies.
It's like we're all in this together, even if we don't even know who they are yet.
And it brings us back to something we mentioned earlier, the role of the media in shaping, public perception. It seems like they have a huge responsibility here, don't they?
Oh, they absolutely do. Think about how media coverage can, either fuel our fascination or totally amplify our anxieties. It can help us understand really complex issues, or it can lead us down those rabbit holes of misinformation.
It's like they're holding, like a magnifying glass up to all our hopes and fears, sometimes even distorting what's actually happening. That is a great analogy. And it's why it's so important for us to be critical consumers of information. We need to be aware of our own biases, to question the sources we're relying on, and to seek out, well, multiple perspectives.
It's like, being a detective. We need to gather the evidence, evaluate how credible it is, and then draw our own conclusions. We can't just passively absorb whatever information is, thrown at us.
Exactly. And that's, well, especially true when it comes to exopolitics, where the information landscape is it's always changing. What we know today could be totally different tomorrow, and we need to be, adaptable and open to new evidence.
So it's all about staying curious, staying informed, and staying engaged. And maybe, just maybe, by having these conversations and preparing ourselves, mentally and strategically, we'll be ready for, well, whatever the universe decides to throw our way.
I couldn't have said it better. We're venturing into some, well, uncharted territory here. And the more we learn, the more we realize just how much we don't know. But that's part of what makes this so fascinating.
It's a reminder that we're, always evolving both as individuals and, well, as a species. And who knows, maybe this whole journey into exopolitics will ultimately lead us to a greater understanding of, ourselves and our place in the cosmos. It's interesting, we started this whole deep dive talking about spaceships and treaties and stuff, but it really feels like we've been on this, journey of self-discovery. Exopolitics makes you question everything you thought you knew.
It really does, and that's one of the things that I think makes it so compelling. It forces us to confront all our assumptions, to expand our understanding of what's even possible, and to consider, the ethics of our actions,
Yeah.
but like on a cosmic scale.
And speaking of ethics, there's one part of exopolitics we haven't really explored as much. Science fiction. We've talked about how those sci-fi movies and books, can shape how we see alien life, but could they actually be preparing us for, like, real contact?
It's a fascinating question. Science fiction, I think, often acts as this like mirror, right? It reflects all our anxieties about the unknown. But it can also be a powerful tool, for exploring potential futures and grappling with these ethical dilemmas, but in this like safe space, a fictional space.
It's like a thought experiment.
Exactly. We can play out all these different scenarios, first contact, alien invasions, these cultural exchanges, and see how they might actually unfold.
And some sci-fi writers, I mean, they've been, like, really good at predicting things, haven't they?
Oh, yeah, like technology and how society changes. Take Arthur C. Clarke's Childhood's End. It looks at what happens when we encounter this, vastly superior alien intelligence, and it makes us ask these questions about, like, the future of humanity and the choices that we might have to make.
It's a pretty humbling thought, realizing that, we might not be the most advanced civilization out there.
Yeah.
And it makes you think, like, how would we handle that? Would we embrace the change or would we resist it?
That's one of the like core themes of the book. And it's something that, we as a species really do need to be ready to grapple with. And then you have Philip K. Dick's The Man in the High Castle, which is all about the media, how it's manipulated, and, well, the nature of reality in a world controlled by, external forces.
That's kind of a chilling thought, isn't it? It feels really relevant today.
Yeah.
Especially with all these conversations about UFO disclosure
Yeah.
and like misinformation.
Yeah.
If we can't even agree on what's real now, how are we supposed to navigate something like, an extraterrestrial encounter?
That's the challenge for sure. We have to get better at critical thinking, learn how to evaluate information when it comes from different sources, and be more aware of our own biases.
Otherwise, we're just setting ourselves up to be, manipulated,
Right.
whether it's by our own governments or potentially even, by extraterrestrial entities.
Right. And well, that's why science fiction can be so valuable. It gives us this way of like thinking through all these complex issues, and it helps us, better understand what's possible, the challenges, especially when it comes to extraterrestrial contact.
So are you saying that if we want to be prepared for the future of exopolitics, we should all start reading more sci-fi?
I would highly recommend it. And not just the, doom and gloom stuff. There's so much sci-fi out there that's optimistic, that explores, what if humans and extraterrestrials could actually work together, collaborate. Think about, like, Star Trek.
That's true. Star Trek is all about this future where, humanity has overcome its own problems and, like, embraced exploration and diplomacy.
Yeah. It's a reminder that even when we're facing the unknown, well, we can still grow, we can understand, we can connect. And that's a message that I think is really powerful, whether we're talking about our interactions here on Earth or with, potential life out there.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you want our listeners to take away from all of this?
I hope they come away with a sense of wonder, of curiosity, and that they realize that, exopolitics isn't just this abstract thing. It has real implications, and we all have a stake in it.
And maybe even, like, a little bit of hope.
Absolutely. That sense of, like, excitement, possibility. That's what makes us want to explore, to learn, and to imagine this future where, well, humanity embraces its role as a citizen of the cosmos.
And for those who want to, keep learning, we highly recommend Miguel Salazar's book, Beyond Earth. It's a really thought-provoking and comprehensive guide to the world of exopolitics.
And don't forget, as you keep learning and exploring, keep asking those questions. Challenge yourself, challenge your assumptions, and, well, just stay engaged. The future of exopolitics is being shaped right now, and we can all play a part in that.
Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey. Until next time, keep looking up.